Well, hello and welcome everybody to these talks that are sponsored by the Ronnie K. Irani Center for Energy Solutions from the University of Oklahoma. Today's topic, we're going to talk about Ukraine, the natural gas, and the global economy, and the impact of the war in Ukraine right now, and why Russia has decided to attack Ukraine. The premise in general in the media has been that Russia is planning to reinstate or recreate the Soviet Union. Therefore, they are trying to expand territorially and essentially trying to recover all of the countries that used to belong to the Soviet Union in the 80s and early 90s. I have a problem with that premise, and we're going to talk about that with Roderick Perez. And one of the details of that is there are countries that could be an easier target if that was the premise. If that was the real goal of Russia, they could have actually attacked Georgia, Moldova, or easier targets before aiming for Ukraine. Also, they are having problems right now, and they're not having the best relationships, let's put it that way, with Finland and Sweden, which are not countries that used to be members of the Soviet Union. So the situation here is, I'm not so sure about whether Russia really is intending to recreate the Soviet Union. What I do know, however, is that it is having a significant impact on the energy markets in Europe. We have with me Roderick Perez. He's actually living in Europe right now. And one of the things I want to ask him is, how is he experiencing the energy sector from the point of view of an user in Europe? Roderick.
Okay, well, thank you, Luis, and thank for everybody who is listening to us in this new season that we're having in this series of talks that, as Luis Carlos was mentioned, are organized by the Energy Center of the University of Oklahoma. Well, the situation here is kind of very scary in some point, and well, there are three facts that I would like to start talking with you, Luis. The first is that this week the Beam Energy, which is the energy company, the public some point energy company that is running the energy at the city of Vienna here in Austria, is asking to the government a 6 billion loan in some sense, because I mean the price increase in the gas, it's, I think it took everybody in not in the best way. Okay,
Of course.
of course, and this opened the topic of about like, well, you know, I can see that especially that the few hydro generated
Hydroelectric?
power plants, yeah, that we have here in Austria and also in Germany, it has been low because I mean, as you can see also in the news, due to the hot seasons that we're living right now, the rivers are getting low flow. It cannot generate enough electricity. And this is a very interesting topic because on the other side, as you were mentioning, and this is something that we're going to discuss today. I would like to go into the news because it was very shocking that it says that the Gazprom also has a profit of 29 billion in 2021, and it also report more recent earnings, or a vast amount of earnings recently. You know, and this is something
Roderick,
that it's
Roderick,
yeah.
for those hearing us that are not familiar with the energy sector, Gazprom is the company controlled by the Russian government that is in charge of production and distribution of natural gas in Russia and Europe, of course.
Yeah, and this is something that, and also it has been very common in the news, and I don't know if you see it, but the Russians are burning the gas, you know, and it's kind of like a threat, like, look what I'm doing with the gas that I'm selling to you, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, this is something that is kind of crazy at any point. And well,
and the
what do you
funny
think is
part
the main
is
reason about it?
the funny part about that burning of the gas is that they didn't pick a processing facility far away. No, They picked the one processing facility that they have near the border of Finland to burn all the gas so that the Finnish could actually see it.
Yeah.
So I don't think that's a coincidence. Yes.
Yeah, and also, well, if you for the audience that they have been following us, in the first episode that we talked about this, that was around 6 months ago, because the wars already have 6 months already. And remember that we talked about the Nord Stream gas pipeline, right?
Yes.
And right now it's the Russians are having the excuse like, always is in repair and we need this turbine and so on. And basically the turbine is something that they send it to the shop, but they didn't pick it up, for the reason they cannot install it, but it's because they don't want to install it. Okay.
Yes.
This has been something crazy.
Well, hopefully in the following slides, I'm gonna sell you guys the idea that this is really an energy war. And more specifically, I believe, it's my opinion, that this is the first significant war related to natural gas. In the past, we had many wars about oil. Of course, oil has also something to do in this one, but the main issue is natural gas. I'm going to show you a couple of slides showing the production of oil and gas and the relationship in the energy sector in Europe. I like this slide, even though it's a little bit old, because it's from 2017. And in 2017, contrary to the popular opinion, it was clear at the time that USA was the main oil producer in the world. When I ask most people that are not in the energy sector, which country do you think is the most important oil producer, they usually say Saudi Arabia. And some people mention Canada. Funny thing is, I never heard anyone not related to the energy sector mention the United States or Russia as the main producers. The thing here is, USA, Saudi Arabia, and Russia, between the three of them, they produce about 35% of the energy, oil-related energy, in the world. So when one of these countries has problems or gets involved in a war, or like in the case of Russia, we're going to have to blockade the oil coming from Russia for war purposes. When that kind of situation happens, of course, there's going to be a significant impact in the markets. But the other important thing is, look at the connectivity in Europe. You see here the main distribution network of oil between Russia and Europe, and which countries actually receive the most oil coming from Russia. You can see that Netherlands and Germany are at the top, and by far. What this is telling you is that two of the most important countries in Europe, nobody will disagree with me with the fact that Germany actually has the biggest GDP in Europe. Two of the most important countries in Europe actually depend a lot on oil coming from Russia. And I will argue that a lot of Europe also too. You can see the numbers here. And with natural gas, the same phenomena shows up. What we have here is clearly significant dependence, especially from Germany, for the natural gas coming from Russia. And you can see here in these lines what Roderick was talking about. In these red lines, you see old gas pipelines coming from Russia into Europe. And the two main pipelines, about 70% of the gas into Europe comes from these two lines going through Ukraine. There is also some natural gas production coming from Poland. And the other significant portion of natural gas comes from the Nord Stream 1 that bypasses all those other countries and goes directly into Germany. Now, the Russians built Nord Stream 2. It took a lot of effort and a lot of effort also on the part of the US and the Western allies to impede or blockade that construction. But they finished the construction of Nord Stream 2 in November 2021. They expected Germany to approve the pipeline and start sending natural gas directly to Germany, bypassing entirely Ukraine. But the Germans realized that if they do that, they're going to have a problem in the market. I'm going to show you the problem in the market that they're going to have. And they realized they will be depending too much on natural gas and energy from Russia. So they decided not to authorize or not to grant permission to Nord Stream 2, which precipitated, I believe, the decision from Russia to declare war in Ukraine. I don't think it's a coincidence that in November 2021, Germany decides not to authorized Nord Stream 2, excuse me. And in February 2022, the war actually started. Um, why is that? If you look at the distribution of Germany, the main German gas supply sources, you're going to see here, this is in 2021, by December 2021, about a third of the gas was coming from Russia directly, about 20% coming from the domestic storage, another 20% coming from the Norway pipeline gas, and between Netherlands and the Czech Republic, another 20%. Now, if I were to authorize Nord Stream 2, these other pipelines, the Czech Republic, the Netherlands pipeline, and the Norway pipeline, will have problems competing with prices. And chances are they're not going to be able to send the natural gas in the same amounts that Germany was buying before, because there will be excess supply from Russia, and Russia will be selling that gas at a discount in order precisely to force these countries to stop the exports to Germany. If that were to succeed, if that plan had succeeded, what will happen is that Germany will be depending on Russia for about 70% of the natural gas needs. In other words, I believe, again, it's my opinion, that Russia was actually trying to control Germany and therefore Europe by proxy, using energy as a weapon. And when they realized the Germans were not going to allow it, they decided to invade Ukraine to do it anyway. So I believe this is the first time that we're seeing a war that could end up in a world war. I don't know, but this is the first time that we are seeing a European war and a significant conflict, driven mainly because of natural gas. What do you think, brother?
Well, I think I'm agree with you, and also let's talk with the audience, or let's mention about. I mean, you and I, we have been in the oil industry for a while, and I remember the times like when everything started with the fracking in the U.S. that it was a revolution, that we're talking about 2006, 2007. I remember because I'm really sure you too. We have some friends working in the oil industry that, especially the ConocoPhillips, start to have some projects to open and to explore and develop some facilities of gas in Poland. And the Poland government and the European Union said, no, we're going to ban fracking. And even that, okay, it has some, we're not going to discuss that it was a good or bad in terms of the environment. However, this was for me that said to the Russians, okay, you are the ones who don't care about the environment. You're just going to extract all the gas and all the energy supplies, and we're going to be dependent of you. I mean, and since then, the fracking is banned in all European countries.
Yes, and that was not the only. Yeah, I totally agree, Roderick. And as a matter of fact, the ban on fracking was not the only mistake that Germany or Europe made regarding energy sources. If you recall, by 2011, because of the Fukushima effect, they decided to shut down a lot of the nuclear plants that Germany had. For most people, regarding nuclear capacity, Germany has, and I might be wrong here by one or two plants, but not that by much. Germany used to have about 17 nuclear plants running at one time, providing a significant amount of energy. Today, I believe they have 6, and they were planning to shut down additional 3 by the end of the year, which I believe they're not going to do. They realize by now that they're going to need those plants. But imagine that change in the energy sources.
But guess, I mean, we're talking about nuclear power, right? And this is something that the people maybe not realize. But now let me ask you, Luis, who is the one who provide the batteries or the energy sources of those nuclear energy plants?
Yes, that's Russia. A good point. The energy, the uranium rods that you need for fuel to a nuclear plant, those are mainly provided by Russia. I believe the source of uranium in Europe is about at least 30% or 35% coming from Russia. In other words, if you need uranium in Europe, more likely than not, that uranium is going to come from Russia. Now, there are other sources, of course, And you could argue that uranium could come from the United States too, and from other sources in South America and even Africa. Granted, problem is the time that it takes to repurpose an abandoned nuclear facility to generate electricity again is not short. It takes a significant amount of time. And even in the plants that you didn't abandon totally, the ones that you just shut down, restarting these plants require fuel. And if you don't get the fuel immediately, what you're going to end up using is old rods that are not going to generate enough electricity anyway. Yes, you can start a plant, but the generation capacity is going to be mediocre at best because of the quality of the rods that you're using. You're going to be using the old rods that you had before the shutdown. So the source of the rods is also another problem, yes. But that dependency created a significant problem because you started essentially shutting down fracking, you start shutting down nuclear energy, you rely entirely on future energy projects for coming from wind and solar. And what happened now is that Russia saw an opportunity and is creating this problem. Look at the gas prices in Europe. This is since 2007, I believe. I have the numbers here. The ballpark average is somewhere around $9 per million BTU. And you can see what happens around 2021 when Germany decided not to authorize Nord Stream 2. You can see that immediately the gas prices started going up. And of course, in 2022 with the war, it went even worse. And right now, it's something that you don't believe. Actually, you see the numbers and you don't believe it. Natural gas prices in Europe are in the ballpark of $50 per million BTU, which is, for those in the market, a number that is out of proportions entirely. It blows your mind to believe that natural gas could be at these prices right now. And it's not the only problem. The Russians are manipulating the market because they realize that they can, because now Europe is vulnerable to them. In other words, the Russians realize, I don't have to fight a big war. I don't have to dominate the world. I can control it by economic means. And if you need raw materials from me, which you need because I'm the energy source, if I am the battery, you're going to need me and you're going to do as I say. So in reality, this is a war about power. Look at what Russia is doing right now with the natural gas imports. This is the European natural gas imports from Russia in 2021 and 2022. You can see the two pink lines. The light pink one is the previous year, 2021, and the dark red is the 2022. You can see a big difference and a drop in the imports from Russia because of the war. And not only that, you can see how the Russians have decided to change the volumes in the Nord Stream 1, the one pipeline that they can use to send gas directly to Germany, to essentially squeeze Germany. And you can see how in 2021, they used to have ballpark 1,200 million cubic meters of gas flows into Germany. And now they are essentially shutting it down. The red line is very clear. So this is a situation where we're not really fighting for the Soviet Union. We're not really fighting because there are Nazis in Ukraine. We're not really fighting for territory. We're fighting for the control of Europe. And you can control Europe via natural gas. If you can control the energy sources or the energy needs of a country, you can force that country to do as you say. And I believe Russians realize about that. And that's exactly what they are doing.
Well, I agree with you, Luis. And also, I would like to add something else. Can you come back to slides about another one? Yeah, this one is good. In the map of the right, we can see that there is an important hub or income of, let's say, of natural gas from the peninsula of the Iberica, from Spain and Portugal. Yep. And recently, there has been a lot of big news that Spain will be the new hub, and it's going to rescue Europe in terms of the big providers of the income and provide all the gases that the Europe needs. However, and complementing your statement, I think what is the issue? I mean, Spain do not have gas. Okay,
no.
Where the gas is? Well, is in, for example, countries with what they have a bad reputation, like Algeria.
And what is
and what it means for the world. Like we have all these efforts about human rights and to be environmentally friendly, and at this point, I mean, it's like it doesn't matter. We just need to survive, and we're going to just put our head down, and we're going to buy the gas and the hydrocarbon for maybe the most not reliable sources. But that's the point that we are at this moment. Like
Mhm.
yeah.
I agree with you. What we're seeing here is a typical mistake. There is the old adage that says that you don't put all your eggs in the same basket.
Green basket. Yeah.
But Europe, by trying to become green or so-called green, they ended up putting all their energy needs in one basket. And that basket ended up being Russia. And Russia realized about it, and they decided, you know what? Now I can control you guys. And to complement your comment, yes, you can bring gas from Algeria. Yes, you can bring that gas through Spain via Spain and send it to Germany. It's not going to be easy to begin with because you have to reverse a couple pipelines, but yes, you can do it. Anyway, the amount of gas production from Algeria will never suffice to replace all the total gas coming from Russia. So that's the additional problem. You need additional sources of energy. So Germany or Europe in general has three options, the way I see it. One is to control and reduce the natural gas consumption as much as they can, which is why you're seeing right now in Europe, Roderick, the gas prices going, the energy prices actually going up, and why you're seeing companies saying that to their customers, if you save or you reduce your consumption, we're going to even give you a bonus, but please reduce your consumption as much as you can. The second option that they have, of course, is to go nuclear and increase the nuclear capacity of the countries, which Germany can do. But they are not going to be able to do it as fast as you think, because most people think, okay, we can turn the energy plants, the nuclear plants right now, and by the winter, in this December, we're going to have energy coming from nuclear. It's not going to happen because of the problems that you mentioned. You need the new fuel rods, and those fuel rods require uranium, and the main source of uranium happens to be Russia too. Even if you bring uranium from other countries, turning on the energy plants, the nuclear plants, is not as easy because they were shut down with expectations that they're going to be decommissioned, which means they didn't shut it down expecting to bring them back online. When you expect to decommission a facility, you get rid of a lot of stuff. And now you need to bring all those redundant systems that you got rid of back again to get the plant online. And on top of that, even if you manage to do that, the amount of generation is going to be lower than the total demand. So you still need to bring not just 3 or 4 additional nuclear plants. You need to go back to the good old times when you had 17 running. And having 17 plants running at the same time in 3 months, which is essentially what we have for the remaining of the winter, is just not going to happen. It's just not going to happen. So the third option that they could go to fairly quickly is to go with fracking, the thing that you were mentioning. And yes, Germany actually has some shales that are potential for fracking, and you could do some fracking to bring some additional natural gas online and increase the domestic production. Problem with that is you're going to require a lot of rigs, and you're not going to be able to do that in short amount of time. So in other words, yes, there are many solutions that you can implement that are going to be viable past 2023. But in 2022, you don't have options. And the Russians know that, which is why this winter is so critical. This is the winter where there's going to be a real pulse between Europe and Russia to see who wins. And that's the scary part. Really, Germany has no other alternative than to replace the energy sources coming from Russia.
Yeah, definitely. Now let me ask you something, Luis. How is the situation in the US in terms of the rigs? Because, for example, I have some clients in Colombia. Since, I mean, the other reality is that since the people who have the resources, in this case, the oil and gas, they are kind of like drilling like crazy. And I have some clients in Colombia that they say that there is no rig available. Everybody's trying to produce as much as possible or try to keep it busy. And I mean, in the perfect scenario, the European people is not going to bring new rigs. I mean, is the same in the US? Is the
Well,
almost all the rigs are?
the United States is trying to help Europe via what is called LNGs. In other words, if we can produce natural gas here and liquefy it and transport that natural gas via ships to Europe and then decompress it and turn it back into gas in Europe, then we can supply some additional gas. Problem is, of course, the amounts of gas that you can transport in that way are limited, and they are not going to be enough to supply all the demand. But yes, the United States is trying to help here with the fracking and with drilling rigs and all that stuff. The problem additionally to that is the effects of COVID. When COVID hit, the oil and gas demand dropped dramatically, and a lot of those rigs were decommissioned. So now bringing those rigs back, which we are doing, is not as fast or is not as easy as initially thought. You decommissioned these rigs because of COVID with the expectation that the energy prices were going to remain low. And now that the the political need for additional natural gas is required immediately, it's going to be difficult to provide that gas as fast as you need it. Again, they need additional sources of energy now. And really, the options that they have, which is nuclear, fracking, or domestic production, and LNGs, even though could help, they're not going to be able to help now, which is really the problem. So we are facing the first war, really, regarding natural gas. And here's the reaction. Here's what we see. Germany is rethinking now the nuclear power exit that they were planning since 2011 because of the Fukushima effect. Germany is reviving dirty coal gas electric plants in Germany, which of course is going to help. But again, it's not going to be able to replace all the gas. The good news is right now, this is coming from a couple of weeks, no, actually a week ago. German reported that the gas storage that they require for the winter is right now at 80% of the goal. In other words, even though Russia has actually cut a lot of the gas being sent to Germany, the Germans have been able to save enough gas to at least have now 80% of the total goal that they need for the winter, which means really right now for this winter alone, they are going to need only the additional 20% that is missing. And maybe, and here's the question, maybe with reduction in the consumption and the measures taken by the energy companies, increasing prices artificially and stimulating reduction of consumption, maybe they can compensate for that additional 20%, and maybe Germany will be okay this winter. If Germany and the countries in Europe can actually survive this winter without this dependence on natural gas, then after that is not going to be a problem anymore, because then we're going to have time to actually implement these other solutions that we talk about. And these additional solutions are going to come online on time for the winter of 2023. So this is really the winter where the critical issue is. And I would like to mention a paper that I read recently where they mentioned that Germany is now the fulcrum for Vladimir Putin's pressure. And I believe that article was right. I think that Mrs. Constanze Stelzmuller that wrote the article is right on the money when she says that really what we are seeing now, whether Ukraine is going to win this war or not, the result of the Ukraine war really is going to pass via Germany. If Germany can survive this winter, then Ukraine has a chance. If Germany has to yield to the pressure on Russia and actually they are forced to do what Russia wants, then you could argue that Ukraine is lost. I think that's of course it's an opinion, but I think is a good opinion, and she's right on the money.
Well, definitely, and I think this comment also comes in a good moment that yesterday Mikhail Gorbachev died yesterday, and he was one of the persons who changed Russia in a certain way to be open into the world. And right now we're looking into a different world. But yeah,
yes.
Continue,
I think Putin as a leader, he probably thinks that Mikhail Gorbachev made Russia weaker by allowing the Soviet Union to essentially dissolve. I think Putin probably thinks that Mikhail Gorbachev is to blame for this. when in reality he really didn't have a lot of choices here. His country was essentially collapsing because of the Cold War. Again, the problem here is that we are not fighting wars the traditional way anymore. This is not a trench warfare where you dig a hole in the ground and you start shooting each other like in World War One, or it is not a war like we happen to have in World War Two, where you have tanks running in the fields and smashing everything in the way. What we have is further progression of the Cold War. The Cold War was fought essentially by showing strength to each other and out competing each other regarding the possession of nuclear weapons, which is what ended up bankrupting the Soviet Union. And really, it wasn't Mikhail Gorbachev's fault. It's just that they didn't have enough power, economic power, to keep going in this Cold War for longer terms, and that's why the Soviet Union collapsed. What we are seeing now is an evolution of that type of warfare. I will not call this Cold War. I will call this an economic war, in which you try to control countries not by invading them, not by sending troops over the border, but by forcing them to do what you want via economic means. Like this Russia example. If Germany doesn't do what I say, I just shut down the gas and force them to do what I said, and force them to essentially yield to my will. At the end of the day, this is really what Russia is trying to do: control territory, even though it's not physically controlled by them with soldiers in the ground. Look at what happened to Ukraine, as a matter of fact. Ukraine was essentially controlled by a puppet, a government that was a puppet of Mr. Putin until 2014. The revolution came in Ukraine, they deposed this puppet, and as soon as the new guy came in, Russia started to have problems with Ukraine. And the 2014 invasion or conflict, I will argue, with Ukraine was because they didn't longer control the government there. So you are not looking really, Russia is running a different type of warfare. You're not looking to control physically the ground of total Europe. You're trying to control total Europe by means of economic means.
Definitely. And well, I think in order to be closing this talk, I think I would like to highlight one of the comments of Elon Musk that yesterday he mentioned that, okay, we need an energy transition. Okay, that's a fact, but I mean, not at no cost. Okay, and this is kind of like it's something that we need to learn about. This is that the countries need to be, as you mentioned before, and in a very colloquial way, we cannot put all the eggs in the same basket. I mean, we need the energy transition. Yes, we need to combine or have several sources of energy. That's also that we agree on that. But at the same time, it's like still need to have could be oil or let's call it the traditional sources of energy to finance this energy transition, and don't put all the eggs in the same basket. What do you think, Luis?
I will agree with you, Roderick. The big lesson here is don't dismiss an energy source just because you don't like it. Yes, don't put your eggs in the same basket. So if you don't like solar or you don't like wind energy, too bad. I think that you should have more solar and you should have more wind. The same goes for nuclear. Same goes for fracking. The same goes for almost any other alternative source that you can find that will help you provide energy and keep different baskets where you can put those eggs. So that if one fails, let's say for some reason like this, you don't no longer have access to natural gas resources, you can have energy generated by a different means. Uh, especially coal has right now a bad reputation for being dirty. And I will not disagree with environmentalists. Yes, compared to other energy sources, coal, of course, is dirtier. But you should not dismiss coal immediately just because of that. There are technologies, and yes, it could be expensive, but there are technologies that you could implement to actually make coal a little bit better for the environment. So even coal, with that bad reputation, I think is an energy source that you just cannot dismiss. And
Definitely.
Germany is the perfect example here.
Yeah. Do you know how the energy market works here in Europe, Luis?
Go ahead, Roderick. Tell us.
I mean, I don't have the numbers in my head, but I mean, this is another lesson that the government in Europe need to learn is because, for example, let's say that the cheapest way to produce energy is solar. The solar could cost, let's say, $0.1 or euro. Then, if the energy that is coming from the wind turbines, it costs 0.5, then all the energy that is injected into the system, it will start to cost 0.5, and so on. The most expensive is the energy produced by the the gas thermoelectrics, okay? And that was an idea, or that was an incentive in order to generate more energy through solars and wind turbines. But what's the fact? Right now, since everything is more expensive right now, since, as I was mentioning, just to put a very simple example, if the energy produced for solar panels costs 0.1 euro, and the energy produced by gas energy plants, it costs 10 euros. That means everything that is produced, it will cost you 10 euros per kilowatts, and this is what is making everything also so expensive. In my house, we received that this year or next year, our energy is going to start to cost the double. It's like 100% increase. And this is okay. This is part of the energy transition. Probably the Congress and the people in the government did it in a way to incentivize the green or the renewables. But in this kind of occasions, looks like the Russians had everything planned and they knew how far they could go.
Yes, I do believe that's the main lesson from this. The Russians are not doing something crazy here. They were planning very well how to control Europe via natural gas. The one thing they didn't expect was the Ukrainian reaction and the brave reaction, actually, of those soldiers in Ukraine that are fighting against all odds. And they were not expecting to see that level of resistance, that level of heroism, I believe. And of course, that sent the plan in disarray. I believe it was Ike Eisenhower that said that plans are the things that never hold up when you face the enemy, or any plan will break down as soon as you face the enemy. That's exactly what happened to the Russians. As soon as they went into Ukraine, the plan that they had went in disarray. And we have a big debt, and I will argue that Europe right now has a big, huge debt with Ukraine, and we owe a lot of the situation that we're living right now thanks to the reaction of Ukrainians and the ability that they had to defend their own country.
Definitely. But well, something else more to add, Luis?
No, I think that this explains our position. Again, this is an opinion. You could argue that yes, it's an opinion like any other, and the reality is that still Russia wants to rebuild the Soviet Union. I'm not going to disagree entirely with that, but when money is involved, and in this case it is, I have a tendency to believe more that the main reason for this war it's economic, and we are seeing a different type of warfare now, which is I will call it economic warfare. We had a Cold War. Right now we have an economic war. Anyway, thank you for listening to us. Next week we're going to have another talk like this, and we're going to keep having those talks now on a weekly basis. So see you next Thursday at the same time, noon, where we're going to discuss a different topic. We're going to let you know about the topics via LinkedIn and messages. Thank you for your attendance.
Okay. Happy to see you, Luis. Have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.
Have a good one, Roderick.